Hey friends, it's Miss Nicole and I am here with Rockin' Readers. We're actually going to be doing Finding Tinker Bell, a Nevergirls adventure, and this is the story Beyond Neverland. So we're going to go ahead and read this in two parts, and this is part one. So I absolutely love Disney. It's one of my all-time favorite things, and I really love the Tinker Bell stories. So the Nevergirls is a really great take on that entire world that Disney has created. So I hope you guys enjoy reading along with me. And this is by Kiki Thorpe and illustrated by Jana Christie, for those of you who aren't aware. There's an entire collection of these books. There's some illustrations of Neverland. Chapter 1. The box sat on a high shelf, peeking out from behind a stack of old magazines. It was a plain brown box. It looked no different from a dozen other boxes in the basement. And yet 6-year-old Gabby Vasquez was sure she'd never noticed it before. Gabby turned to her older sister, Mia, who was lying on the couch with her nose stuck in a book. "What's in there?" Gabby asked, pointing at the box. Mia glanced up. "Junk, probably," she said with a sulk. Mia was in a bad mood. It was the first Saturday of summer, and the sisters' plans to go swimming had been spoiled by a sudden rainstorm. Instead of splashing in the pool with their friends, they had spent the morning moping around the house and squabbling over the remote control. At last, in exasperation, their mother had sent them both down to the basement to get them out of her hair. As Mia went back to reading, Gabby looked around the room. An old wooden chair sat in the corner. Gabby grabbed it and dragged it noisily over to the shelf. Mia watched her over the top of her book. Gabby climbed onto the chair and reached for the box. Even on her tiptoes, she couldn't quite touch it. She climbed off the chair and found a pillow. She put the pillow on the chair, stepped on top of it, and reached for the box again. Beneath her, the chair wobbled. With a loud sigh, Mia set her book down. "For Pete's sake, Gabby, don't hurt yourself. I'll get it." Mia climbed onto the chair and took down the box, which was taped tightly shut. Someone wrote across the top in a fat black marker. Gabby knew all of her letters, but sometimes she still had trouble with long words. "What does it say?" she asked. "Treasure," Mia read. "Handle with care." The girls raised their eyebrows at each other. "I'll get the scissors!" Gabby exclaimed. She raced up the stairs and hurried down a moment later with kitchen shears. Mia reached for them, but Gabby held the scissors out of her grasp. "I get to open it. I saw it first." "Careful, Gabby!" Mia hovered over her sister as she sliced through the packing tape and pulled open the flaps. The box was full of crumpled, yellowing newspaper. The girls eagerly began to dig through it. "I've got it! Oh!" Mia lifted something from the box, then sat down with a disappointed sigh. "It's only an old boat." "Only" isn't the right word, Gabby thought. True, the little wooden boat wasn't fancy. Its green paint was chipped and faded, and it didn't have a lot of sails or a dragon-shaped prow or anything else grand. It was just a humble little fishing boat with a squat cabin, a single sail, and a net made out of string. Even its name was funny. Tino's Treasure was painted on the side in wobbly, uneven letters. But Gabby sensed something special was about it right away. "Let me see," she said, reaching for the boat. The moment it was in her hands, a shiver ran through her. Everybody give me a shiver. Good job. She felt as if the boat were waiting for something. An adventure, maybe, Gabby thought. There's gotta be something else in here. Mia fished through the newspaper still inside the box, and Gabby knew she was hoping to find jewelry or some elegant keepsake. Mia loved pretty things. Oh, look! Mia pulled out a single gold-handled magnifying glass. She held it up to her eye like a detective and peered at Gabby's face. Aha! A clue from your mustache. I conclude that you had milk this morning. Gabby giggled. There she is holding the boat. Where'd this stuff come from? She asked her sister. I don't know, Mia said. Let's ask Poppy. They went upstairs and found their father in the living room, working on his laptop. Poppy, look at this! Gabby held up the boat. When Mr. Vasquez saw the boat, his eyes widened. The treasure! My gosh, I haven't seen this in years. He took it gently in his hand, smiling as if it were an old friend. I thought it was lost. Where on earth did you find it? In the basement, Gabby told him. This too. And Mia held out the magnifying glass. Right there. Abuela's old magnifying glass, their father said warmly. This belonged to Grandpa? Gabby couldn't believe it. Their grandfather was a stern, grumpy man. When they visited, he spent most of his time watching television and grumbling about the news. Gabby couldn't imagine him ever playing with such a wonderful toy. No, their father said, this belonged to my abuelo, your great-grandfather. He loved model ships. Look! Mr. Vasquez took the magnifying glass and held it up to the fishing net. See the details? All those knots were done by hand. He pointed out the rubber tires hanging on the side. These bumpers came off an old toy car. I used to spend hours playing with this. I pretended it was my boat and imagined all the adventures I could have. Gabby had been imagining that too. Puppy, can I play with it? Her father hesitated, but only for a second. Of course, mija, but be careful. It's special to me. I will, I promise. Gabby gently took the boat. She made it rock up and down as if it were sailing on the sea. The doorbell rang. Their father got up to answer it. Hi, Mr. Vasquez, said two familiar voices. Gabby and Mia both ran to the door. Their friends Kate McCready and Lainey Winters stood on the doorstep. Water streamed from their raincoats. Can Mia and Gabby come out to play? They asked. She was trying to use her wet sleeve to wipe the raindrops off her big round glasses, rather unsuccessfully. In this weather? Mr. Vasquez asked with a frown. Kate's broad white smile flashed beneath her hood. Oh, don't worry, Mr. Vasquez. We won't be out in the rain for long, she assured him. The girls exchanged secret looks. They all knew what Kate meant. They were going to Neverland. A portal to the magical island lay behind a loose fence board in Mia and Gabby's backyard. The four girls had discovered it together, and they used it to travel to Neverland whenever they could. Please, Poppy, just for a little bit, Gabby begged. All right, he said, but come inside right away if you see lightning. We will, they said in unison. Kate and Lainey waited on the doorstep while Gabby and Mia scrambled into their raincoats. Gabby was halfway to the door when she spied the model ship on the coffee table. She grabbed it, tucked it under her raincoat, and ran after the other girls. Chapter 2. In Pixie Hollow, the fairy Tinkerbell stared out the window of her tea kettle workshop. Outside, a warm wind was blowing. The wind was strong. It bent the buttercups, rattled the meadow grass, and made the cart mice jumpy. The wind blew down the chimney spout of the kettle, making a loud whistle. But Tink didn't notice. She was watching a butterfly outside. The butterfly struggled against the wind. Its wings fluttered and flapped desperately, but it wasn't getting anywhere. Tink felt sorry for it. At some point, though, the butterfly seemed to stop struggling. It spread its wings and let the wind carry it. Up, up it soared. Tink leaned out the window to watch it as it became a small dot of yellow against the treetops. Then it was an even smaller dot against the blue sky. Tink couldn't see the butterfly anymore, but still she stayed with it. In her mind, she was the butterfly, flying high above Neverland, higher than she'd ever gone. She could see beyond Neverland, across the sea, all the way to the edge of the world where the sky was pink and purple and gold and even some colors she'd never seen before. She could... Tinkerbell? Tink? Tink! Tinkerbell snapped out of her reverie. Her friend Bobble the Sparrow Man was standing in the doorway of her workshop. He held a large, greasy black pot in his skinny arms. He frowned at Tink with concern. "Oh, fly with you, Bobble," Tinkle greeted him. Traces of her daydream clung like cobwebs to the corners of her mind. She shook her head to clear them. Everybody, shake your head to clear those thoughts. "What have you got there?" "Dulcie's pot is giving her trouble again," Bobble said. "It keeps turning her chocolate mousse into gooseberry jelly." Uh-oh, that's not good. She sent it to be tinkered. Asked for you specifically. "I'll take a look at it," Tink said. "You can leave it there." Bobble set it down with a grunt of relief. "That pot's got a mind of its own," said Bobble. "I swear it made itself heavier the whole way here. I keep telling Dulcie she ought to have someone make her a new one, but she won't hear of it. She says she's attached to the old thing." "That's okay," Tinkerbell said. "I like a challenge." Tink turned to her work table, but Bobble continued to stand in the doorway, blinking at her through his glasses. They were made from 2 dewdrops, held in place by wire frames, and they made his eyes look enormous. It was hard not to notice him staring. "Is there something else?" Tink asked. Bobble cleared his throat. "If you don't mind my asking, are you feeling all right?" "Yes," Tink answered. "Why?" "It's just you don't seem yourself lately," Bobble said. "I'm all right," Tink replied, rubbing her forehead. "I think I just have a bit of violent fever." "Fever?" Bobble's brow furrowed. This is a furrowed brow. Everybody give me a furrowed brow. "Should I call a nursing fairy?" asked Bobble. "No, not that kind of fever. Bobble, don't you ever get the urge to fly beyond Neverland?" Bobble shook his head. "Can't say that I do. Sometimes I just feel, I don't know, like I'm missing something. Maybe there's more I could be doing than just fixing pots and pans," said Tink. "It's the south wind," Bobble told her firmly. "It's been blowing hard lately. You've got to be careful when the wind blows from the south. Strange things are bound to happen. It can put odd notions in your head." Maybe," said Tink. She didn't believe that south wind nonsense. "Well," Bobble peered at her carefully. "You're sure you're all right?" Tink gave him a reassuring smile. "Yes, Bobble, I'm perfectly fine," she said. There she is peering out the window. She looks kind of sad, huh? "Just let me know if you need anything." Bobble closed the door behind him. When he was gone, she turned to Dulcie's pot. It wasn't the first time she'd had to fix it. Bobble was right about the pot having a mind of its own. No matter which ingredients the baking fairy used, the pot only cooked what it felt like. It was just a sort of problem Tink usually liked, but today her heart wasn't in it. She examined the pot for a few moments, then set it aside. From beneath her work table, Tink pulled out a map. She unrolled it across the table, weighing the corners down with her tinker's hammer and her pots of glue. This map was made of birch bark, so old it was starting to yellow. She had to take extra care that the edges didn't crumble. In the center of the map was a drawing of Neverland, but that didn't interest her. She knew Neverland like the back of her hand. What caught her eye were some words scribbled off to the side. Someone had written in faint, spidery handwriting, "Shadow Island." There she is, checking out the map. What was Shadow Island? Tink had been wondering ever since she found the map in the Home Tree Library, shoved behind a shelf of books about caterpillar farming. She had crossed the sea dozens of times on adventures with Peter Pan, but she'd never seen Shadow Island. She'd never even heard of it. Tink squinted at the map. She could see other lines overlapping the drawing. They were smudged and faint, as if someone had drawn something there, then erased it. Like a shadow, Tink thought. A spark of an idea had grown in Tink's mind. If there really was a Shadow Island, maybe she could be the fairy to find it. But how? A fairy could fly only so far before her wings gave out. Of course, she could ask her old friend Peter Pan to come. He could carry her when she got too tired. But Peter was unreliable. One minute he'd be there, the next he'd be off chasing eagles or playing with mermaids. Tink knew she couldn't count on him. Why was she wasting her time with mysteries and maps? She was a tinkering talent fairy, and her place was here, in Pixie Hollow. Goodness knows she had plenty to do. Tink went back to working on Dulcie's pot. She'd just located the source of the problem. A patch of rust was making the pot surly when she heard a whistle. Her ears pricked up. This time it wasn't of caterpillars and field mice and flew towards... This time it wasn't the wind whistling in her chimney spout. It was a reed whistle. It sounded once, twice, and with a gasp, Tink let go of the pot and fluttered into the air. The whistle was a scout's alarm. A fairy was in trouble. Oh boy, what's going on, guys? Here we are at chapter 3. Alright, we all ready? We all following? Gabby and the other girls had almost reached the home tree when they heard the whistle. It was a thin piping sound, faint but urgent, that means important, coming from across the meadow. From all over Pixie Hollow, fairies came fluttering. They emerged from the tiny doorways that lined the home tree's branches and dropped their thimble buckets and pine needle brooms to the ground. They left their herds of caterpillars and field mice and flew towards the meadow. "What's happening?" Mia called out to a fairy. The fairy barely paused. "It's a scout's alarm. Someone needs help." A fairy was in trouble. Gabby set down her great-grandfather's boat between the roots of the home tree and ran after the other fairies. The other girls were right behind. They followed the whistle all the way through the meadow to the orchard on the far side. The orchard was usually one of Gabby's favorite places in Pixie Hollow. Plum, apple, and cherry trees grew there, and the grass was soft and green. Gabby loved to lie in the shade of an apple tree and watch harvest talent fairies buzz back and forth, picking ripe fruit. But today, the orchard was still. The harvest fairies hovered next to their trees. They looked as if under a spell. As other fairies flew into the orchard, they stopped too and stared at something on the ground. At first, Gabby didn't see it. As she ran forward, Mia suddenly grabbed her arm and pulled her back. "Gabby, watch out!" Then Gabby saw a snake lay in the tall grass. It was long and green and as thick around as a jump rope. A few feet away, a lone fairy cowered at the base of a tree. The whole orchard seemed frozen. Everyone watched the snake. The snake watched the fairy. Slowly, the snake lifted its head and tested the air with its tongue. "Why doesn't the fairy fly away?" Gabby whispered. "I don't think she can," Kate said. "She's too scared. She has no glow." The fairy's glow had gone out completely. She looked no brighter than a mouse. "She's afraid to move," Lainey agreed. "A snake can strike much faster than a fairy could fly." Two animal talent fairies, Fawn and Beck, had flown as close to the snake as they dared. They were talking to it in low voices. Gabby hoped they were telling it to go away. But the snake took no notice of them. It seemed to be in a trance. Its head swayed. Its head swayed a little, and its tongue flicked out again. How scary is that snake? Look at him staring at that fairy. I know I'd be scared too. And we're bigger than a snake. Imagine if you were as small as a fairy. Gabby couldn't stand it. Somebody do something, she begged. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Kate's hand creep into the air and twist an apple off the tree above them. Kate's wrist snapped forward, lightning quick. The apple struck the ground right in front of the snake, startling it. That meant the apple hit the ground right next to the snake. The snake coiled in on itself. The movement broke the spell in the orchard. 2 scouts swooped in and whisked the petrified fairy away. The scared fairy, that's petrified, scared stiff. Other fairies flew at the snake, shouting and clacking pebbles together. The girls joined in, making a racket. They stomped their feet and hollered. They banged their sticks together. The snake coiled even tighter. It looked annoyed. There went its lunch, and now all the noise was making things worse. As the clamor grew, the snake decided it had had enough. It uncoiled and slithered away, slithered away. The fairies and the girls cheered. Fairies swarmed around Kate. They pinched her cheeks and patted her head. The air rang with their praise. Kate blushed beneath her freckles. "It was just a fastball," she said. The terror of watching the fairy, followed by the burst of relief, made Gabby feel fizzy with energy. As they followed the fairies back to the home tree, she couldn't stop talking. "Kate, that was so neat. You threw that apple so fast." "I want to learn to throw like that. Will you teach me? Promise?" Kate laughed. "I'd be glad to teach you, Gabby. And I helped scare away the snake, too. I stomped my feet really hard. I think that helped." "It definitely did," Lainey agreed. That fairy was really scared. Gabby babbled on. "I think we should do something nice for her. Like maybe we could pick some flowers for her. Or make her something." "I know. We can make her a card. It can say, 'We hope you feel better soon.' I can even draw a picture on it." Mia grinned. "That's a great idea, Gabby." They walked on, Gabby bursting with energy and ideas. She passed right by her great-grandfather's little wooden boat without even noticing it. Uh-oh. What do you think's going to happen to the boat? Here we are on chapter 4. This is page 34. Tink flew slowly back to her workshop. The rescue had gone well, but she felt gloomy. She thought about how small and vulnerable fairies were. A flying fairy wouldn't make it far on her own. Seeing the petrified fairy in the orchard had only been a reminder of that. "I wish there were some other way," she thought. So Tink drew up short. She hovered in the air, staring. A boat sat in a clump of flowers not 2 feet from her workshop door. It was a big, sturdy boat with a sail made of cloth. A clumsy boat, Tink thought, yet it was the perfect size for a fairy. Tink turned to see who the boat belonged to, but there wasn't a clumsy in sight. The boat looked as if it had dropped straight out of the sky and landed right there in her buttercups. Tink fluttered over to it. The moment she stepped onto the deck, she sensed the boat was special. Tink knew about making things. She could tell when something was well crafted, had been made with love. This boat was both. All of a sudden, Tink understood. Her wish had been granted. She was sure Neverland had something to do with it. The magic of Neverland could never be underestimated. Of course, when magic gives you a gift, you have to take it. Getting the boat inside the tea kettle was the hardest part. The doorway to Tink's workshop was only 3 inches tall, and the boat was a good deal bigger. There she is, right next to the boat. Tink managed it at last, though it took nearly a gallon of fairy dust to magically squeeze it through. Once the boat was inside, Tink got to work. She sealed all the cracks with pine tar and waterproofed them with beeswax. She patched the sail. The lines were made of plain old cotton string, so she replaced them with good fairy-made rope. she oiled the ship's wheel and checked the rudder. The cabin was musty, so she gave it a good airing, then moved her own bed in. She added a soft thistle-down comforter and a pussy willow pillow so she'd be cozy during the cold nights at sea. It's a very soft plant flower type of thing. Last, but not least, Tink tinkered a shiny new brass bell. She engraved the boat's name on the side, changing just one letter, so it read, Tink's Treasure. So when she rang the bell, its peal was deep and satisfying. Tink worked for 3 days and nights, but at last the boat was ready. The sun was setting as she stepped back to admire it. She thought it was the finest boat she'd ever seen, even better than the grand ships anchored in Pirates' Cove. She had one more thing to do. She needed a map. Of course she had the one under her desk, but it was a library map. She couldn't just take it. Tink sat down and spread out a piece of onion skin. She would trace the map and return the original to the library. She had just started tracing the map onto the papery skin when she heard a knock, knock, knock on her door. Tink opened it. 4 of her friends stood on the doorstep. Iridessa, the light fairy, Fawn, the animal fairy, Rosetta, the garden fairy, and Silver Mist, the water fairy. They looked at Tink gravely. "All right, Tinker Bell, what's going on?" Iridessa demanded. "What do you mean?" Tink asked. "We know you're up to something," Iridessa said. "We haven't seen you for days. You've missed every meal." "There are candles burning in your workshop all night long. The dust keepers say you've used all the buckets of fairy dust." "Yeah, something stinks around here," said Fawn. There was a pause. Rosetta wrinkled her nose and whispered, Fawn, I think that might be you." "Me?" Fawn sniffed her shirt. "Oops, I ran into a stink bug today. Boy, was he in a mood." Iridessa rolled her eyes. "Tink, what we're trying to say is we think you're hiding something from us." "Not hiding anything," Tink replied, stepping aside. "Come in and see for yourselves." Her friends crowded through the doorway, then stopped and stared. Tink had magically stretched the inside of her workshop to make room for the boat, but it still took up most of the room. "It's a boat," Silver Mist observed. "A big boat," Rosetta added. "You're not going to turn pirate on us, are you, Tink?" Fawn asked. Tink laughed. "Of course not. I just want to sail it." "What? Where? When? Why?" her friends asked all at once. "On the Neversea, of course," Tink said. "If the weather's right, I'll leave tomorrow. As for why, well, simply because I can." Her friends stared at her in amazement. Rosetta placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Tink, honey, are you feeling all right?" "I feel fine," Tink said. "Why does everybody keep asking me that?" "It's just—" "Why a boat?" Silver Mist asked. "You aren't even a water fairy," she said. "So?" Tink tugged on her bangs, which she did when she was annoyed. She hadn't expected so many questions. "I know my way around a ship. I've been on plenty of pirate ships with Peter Pan." "Ah, so you're going with Peter," said Iridessa. The others nodded, as if they finally understood. "No," Tink said, tugging harder. "This has nothing to do with him." That was mostly true, but not completely. Journeys with Peter Pan had given Tink her first real taste of adventure. And as any true adventurer knows, adventures are like chocolate ice cream or neverberry pie. Once you've gotten a taste, you crave more. But this time, Tink didn't need Peter. She could have an adventure on her own. "Haven't you ever wanted to do something really big?" she asked her friends. "Sure. That's when I make a rainbow," said Iridessa. "Or a waterfall," said Silver Mist. "Or a tree grow," added Rosetta. "Or a lion roar," said Fawn. "You don't have to leave Neverland to do something big." "Well, maybe I want to be different. Maybe I want to be the first fairy to sail across the Neversea," Tink said. "I might even discover something new." She was about to add like Shadow Island, but then she thought better of it. Instead, she said, You're my friends. Aren't friends supposed to support one another's dreams? Her friends looked abashed. Of course we support you, Tink. Me too. So do I. We all do, said all of them. The fairies wrapped their arms around Tink and pulled her into a hug. But you have to promise to come back, Rosetta added. Tink laughed. I promise. She said goodbye to her friends. After they left, she went back to tracing the map. The faint shadow lay offshore to the east of Neverland, so that was where Tink decided to start. She used a hummingbird quill dipped in blackberry ink. The coast of Neverland was easy to trace. The line showed firmly through onion skin, but the smudge, having no clear edges, was harder. Tink turned up the lantern. As she bent over her work, the bright light cast her shadow on the rounded wall of her tea kettle workshop. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Tink's quill scratched across the page. On the wall, her shadow's quill moved too. She reached to dip the quill in the inkwell, and her shadow did the same. There's her little map right there on the onion skin. It had been a long day. The workshop was warm and cozy, and soon Tink's eyelids grew heavy. She's getting tired. The quill slipped from her hand, and yet from the corner of her eye, Tink seemed to see her shadow still working. A dark island appeared on the map where before there had been none. Ah, so that's Shadow Island, Tink thought sleepily. Huh? Tink's eyes flew open. She grabbed the map and held it up to the light. Nothing was there. I'm imagining things, she said with a laugh. She set down the map, then yawned. It stretched her arms. Good job. And on the wall, her shadow yawned and stretched with her. I'll finish in the morning, Tink said, reaching over and turning down the lantern. Then she started for the door. In the dim light, she didn't notice that her shadow remained where it was, bending over the map. Uh-oh, what could her shadow be doing? Do you guys have any ideas? Any ideas at all what that shadow could be doing? Okay, we're going to read one more chapter in part 1. This is chapter 5. And this begins on page 49. Gabby, Mr. Vasquez said, where's the boat? Gabby was sitting in the kitchen table in her house drawing a picture of Neverland. She paused while coloring a mermaid's tail and looked up. What boat, Poppy? Great-grandpa's boat, the one you found in the basement, he said. What did you do with it? Oh, that boat. Gabby set down her crayon so she could think. She'd taken the boat to Pixie Hollow, and then what? Gabby searched her mind, but she couldn't remember. I know it's somewhere, asked with a smile. Sorry, my phone did something funny. Did something happen to it? Her father asked with a frown. No! Then where is it? Said Gabby. Her father looked at her for a long moment, then he sat down at the table. Mija, I know that boat looks like an old toy, but it's important to me. I know, said Gabby. I was very careful, it's just that... Her father held up a hand. No, listen, I haven't told you why it's important. You see, your great-grandfather made it. He made it? Said Gabby. No wonder the boat seemed so different from other toys. With his own hands, her father said. He was a wonderful craftsman. I loved watching him work. He made all kinds of things, wooden animals, dollhouse furniture, but the boat was always my favorite. I think he would have liked to sail a boat like that. When I was old enough, he gave it to me. It's the only thing of his that I still have, and you've been careless with it. Gabby's throat felt tight. She now saw that she had been careless. For the first time, her father trusted her with something important, and she'd let him down. It was an awful feeling to have. I'll find it, Poppy, she choked out. I promise I won't come back without it. The boat was there somewhere. It had to be. She dug through her toy box and looked in her closet. She pulled everything from under her bed. She found 3 socks, 7 barrettes, and an old art project, and 37 cents. but no boat. Gabby was digging through her dresser drawers when Mia passed by in the hall. She stopped in the doorway of Gabby's room and stared. "What are you doing?" "I can't find the boat," Gabby cried. "What boat?" asked Mia. "Great-Grandpa's boat, from the basement. I think it's lost." Mia sucked in her breath. "Uh-oh, is Poppy mad? "No." Gabby shook her head tearfully. She almost wished her father were mad. Being disappointed in her was so much worse. "I have to find it." "We will." Mia put her arm around her sister. "Let's just retrace your steps. Where was the last place you saw it?" "In Pixie Hollow," Gabby said. "I was bringing it to show the fairies. I thought maybe I could give them a ride." "And then what happened?" asked Mia. Gabby thought hard. And then, oh, I know! I set it down where we all ran to help save that fairy from the snake. It must be there." She started for the door. "We have to go to Pixie Hollow, right now." "I'll get Kate and Lainey," Mia said, heading for the phone. The 4 girls had a rule that they would never go to Neverland without one another. And 20 minutes later, the friends had gathered by the loose fence board. "I can't stay for long," Lainey said. "My mom says I have to be home in a half hour to help with dinner." "We'll just find the boat and come back," Mia told her. "Anyway, you know time never really passes when we're all together in Neverland. You'll be home in plenty of time." "Let's go rescue that boat," Kate patted Gabby's shoulder. Gabby gave her a weak smile. The achy feeling in her throat had gone away. She was glad Kate and Lainey were there. They would help her find the boat. "I'm proud of you for taking care of it," she imagined her father saying. "Come on," Gabby said. She pushed through the fence board aside and crawled through. The first moments of stepping into Pixie Hollow were always the most magical. The ground changed from stubbly grass to soft springy moss. The sounds of cars and lawnmowers were replaced by the jingle of fairy laughter. Even the air felt enchanted. It smelled like orange blossoms and sparkled with dust from the wings of passing fairies. But this time, Gabby hardly noticed any of it. She crossed Cavendish Stream in 2 bounds and raced up the hill to the home tree. Mia, Lainey, and Kate were right behind her. Together, the girls searched by the tree, but the boat was nowhere around. "Are you sure this is where you left it?" Lainey asked. "Yes," Gabby said. She pointed to a patch of flowers not far from Tink's workshop. "I set it right there." "Maybe the fairies moved it," Mia said. "Let's go ask someone." "Excuse me," she flagged down a passing fairy. The fairy paused in midair. She was wearing the walnut shell cap of a fruit harvester. A pair of cherries hung over her shoulder. "Yes?" she asked. "I'm looking for my boat. I left it here. Maybe you've seen it? It's green and about this big." The fairy shook her head. "Haven't noticed any boats." "Why not check the dock? That's where I'd look." "Good idea," said Kate. So the girls returned to Cavendish Stream and followed it down to the bend where the ferry boats were docked. They saw tiny birch bark canoes, boats with leaf sails, and rafts made of twigs. But Mia and Gabby's great-grandfather's boat wasn't among them. It wasn't there. "What if I never find it?" Gabby asked. "Don't give up," Kate told her. "Let's ask Tink." The boat was right outside her workshop. Maybe she'll know what happened to it. When they got to Tink's tea kettle, Gabby knelt down and gently tapped her finger on the metal door. No one answered. She tried to look in the windows, but the curtains were all drawn. The curtains were all shut over the windows. Should she knock again? She knew Tink didn't like to be bothered when she was working. So at that moment, Fawn flew by carrying an armload of sunflower seeds. She stopped when she saw the 4 girls crouched outside Tink's workshop. They all turned to look at her. "What do you mean, gone?" Mia asked. "She found a boat, a nice big sturdy one," Fawn explained. "She went out to sea in it this morning. You just missed her." So I'm going to leave you guys on a cliffhanger. That's page 60. That's the end of chapter 5, and we'll begin next time with chapter 6. Alright, so I hope you guys can sit and wait for that a little bit. I know I'm itching to find out what happens. I hope you are too. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you real soon. Bye, guys.